What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we're going to be recapping the Season 3 Episode 2 November update dev stream, which basically aired a couple of hours ago. It's another 4-hour affair, so the idea of a video like this is actually obviously to compress some of this information and give you the key takeaways from this. There's a fairly substantial amount of stuff that's being added in this November patch, and kind of like my overall sentiment about the dev stream is that where in prior dev streams the mood seemed to be incredibly almost like loose and jokey and very, you know, kind of like fun, it sort of felt as if this dev stream was kind of like a little bit sour and the mood was not great. And I mean, without trying to read into it too much or try to psychoanalyze it or anything like that, it kind of, I don't know, I suppose it maybe feels a little bit as if the developers are starting to feel a little bit of the strain, I guess, from some of the most recent complaints that the game has had in the past couple of weeks and stuff like that. And of course, like, I would say the First Descendant is not going through like the best time right now in terms of like player retention and stuff like that. So I don't know if that plays into it, but then again, it could just be a me thing. I could just be reading into it too much. So it is what it is. But it did kind of like seem a little bit more serious, a little bit more reserved, a little bit less jokey and laughy and that sort of thing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But still a lot of information for us to go through, so I'm going to go through it category by category. Of course, there will be timestamps if there's something specific that you're looking for. There's a little bit of everything here for everybody, I would say, something like that. So, but first of all, they started off essentially talking about some of the issues that they wanted to address from prior weeks, right? So it's been a while since we heard from these guys, so pretty much they opened up about, you know, swords as a topic in general and just general complaints with people, you know, saying like how difficult it is to acquire multiple copies of it, and key issues in the Void Vessel and having to rerun this shit the entire time and all of that. And basically they're going to be bringing in an event in November, I believe, or I think it might be beginning December, but something like that. I think it's end of November, which will essentially be rewarding additional keys, which I don't know, I mean, it doesn't really solve the problem, but more keys means though that you are able to drag more of the materials out per run of the Void Vessel, which I guess is, I don't know, kind of like a one way of solving the problem, right? Like if you're trying to eat soup with a fork and then I go, dude, this isn't working so well, this is taking like really long to eat it with a fork, and then somebody goes, okay, wait, I got you, fam, and then they hand you a teaspoon and you're like, okay, I guess this is a step in the right direction, but we're just not quite there yet. But in any case, so there's that. They did also address the sword pass and basically saying that they've heard the complaints loud and clear. I think generally speaking, the sword pass was received with, I would say, a lot of disdain from players. I think the price was fucking shit. The stuff that you got inside it, you know, for the price was not great, and it just kind of like seemed like something that should have just been attached to the tail of the current battle pass, instead of like going like, okay, well, here's your standard battle pass, and then there's this premium battle pass on top of that, which requires an additional, you know, payment and that sort of thing, and it's specifically around swords, whatever. So what they've said is they've heard the complaints, everything like that, and right now there's no plans in the foreseeable future for them to do something like that again. And they kind of like seemed like, you know, like they kind of got the message and that it wasn't cool. So yeah. Next up, we had something called the Supermassive, dude, and they come up with these names, man. Supermassive Receptor dungeon, right, which is the new activity that we'll be seeing in season 3.2 or 3.B, or, you know, whatever, the second half. And basically, important to notice here is this is not another fucking Void Vessel wing. Great, cool, but this, however, actually feeds off of Axion planes and essentially is a dungeon that you can enter via Axion planes or something like that. And they didn't really show a lot about this at all. It was a very short section. I don't think they even showed it in any gameplay. I kind of like scanned through because I was like, shit, I must have missed it or something like that, but I don't even think they showed any like gameplay inside it. They did show what the boss looks like. They kind of said like there's like it's essentially the motif of the dungeon is that you have all these like husks of void intercept bosses and stuff inside and everything like that. The art looks kind of cool. And my assumption is a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about now later on in this recap, the additional items and so on that you can get in modules and so on and so forth, are actually going to be coming from this dungeon. So yes, this is another content island, I suppose, to a degree. I don't know if the new stuff that is it wasn't specifically said that the new things which are being added in this patch can only come from this dungeon. But based on the past experience that we have with stuff like this, it kind of like seems like, you know, that's the case. So in any case, that then brings us on to the new Descendant, which is being added. I think a lot of people were expecting Dia or someone else or so on, but Harris, which is like Dr. Octopus Light or Diet Dr. Octopus with only like 2 of the arms, is being added to the game. Basically, they did show a bunch of the skills and everything like that, but I tend to rather want to leave that for a video where we can actually peel everything apart. However, she is a toxic Descendant. Her skills are based on tech and fusion. And basically what she kind of like, she does these like sweeping AoEs that deal like damage and stuff like that, but they actually, since she doesn't use MP, she has a custom resource, and this actually based on the amount of this energy that you're expending, you actually build up her survivability, like defense and stuff like that. And that basically sets her up to like then jump in and be like very, very melee focused and close range and everything like that. She kind of seems like the perfect Descendant for sword-based combat, and I believe there is some synergies between the swords and her as well. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, she is very much like opposite to a lot of the Descendants that we've been seeing recently that have been very much about like fucking dumping massive amounts of damage from, let's say, middle to back range, where she's really like in the thick of it, and she's kind of like a fucking, you know, melee Descendant. So it's super early to tell, but usually how this works is the new Descendants are kind of like busted. This was the case for all the most recent ones that we've gotten. There hasn't been a single one that's landed as a fucking dud, even ones which we perhaps thought would, but ended up being actually fucking insane. So there's no reason to believe that that's not going to be the same case for Harris, but Harris also then joins us basically with this update. Then there is an additional power level fucking update now for us, which makes our characters just even more sick and disgusting in terms of power level, and that is Ancestors modules. Now, this is something that we saw back when they showed the entire roadmap for Season 3, and I think a lot of people had questions about what exactly is Ancestors modules. Well, we know now. Basically, what this is this is a special kind of module. It has a different color. It's like the rarity is like fucking better than fucking Transcendent or something like that. And it can fit in any one of the module slots on your Descendant as usual, right? And the idea of these Ancestors modules is that they essentially combine 2 to 3 modules into one. So, for example, this Ancestors module can have rolling on it like crit hit, crit damage, and like range, for example. And in it doing that, you can potentially then take the specific crit damage or range modules that you have that just add to those specific stats in your character and potentially replace them with something else. So maybe you're playing a very fucking glass cannon Descendant, so then you can put in some survivability, slap in some HP, defense, you know, something like that. Or in cases where you need some additional crit damage or anything like that to cap, this module can actually get you there then, basically, again, by combining all of this stuff. Now, these are specific to Descendant, so you'll see that they actually like the Transcendent module. Not Transcendent, sorry, the Ancestors module itself is actually per Descendant, and that's obviously on purpose, because the thing is, you don't want, for example, if your Descendant is based on tech damage or something like that, you don't want it to roll like fusion, you know, or something like that. So it makes sense that it's specifically focused, and most likely the idea would be that you would roll the mods on this Ancestors module to obviously benefit the exact kind of build that you're trying to extract out of your Descendant. Now, these can be re-rolled, all right, and they're basically in a similar way to the way how you re-roll the motorbikes, right? So the bikes in the game, you can reload the entire skills, and then you can basically choose with the Ancestors module whether you want to keep the old or the new. And this system itself is also designed to actually be capped by the amount of these modules that you can acquire per day. And that's because these modules will eventually be tradable as well, and we're going to talk about trading just now. But I believe that this is a effort from the developer side to also make sure that these modules aren't like fucking over farmed and essentially flood, because they are very powerful. So you will be able to get these from quests. You'll be able to buy them from ETA 0, I believe. Wall Crasher will also drop them, and then as said, like, there will be a certain amount of ways that you can acquire one during a day, so that you can, you know, you kind of like can't just sit and farm for like 8 hours and get a shitload. So again, kind of like getting you to log in every day to get your daily attempts at the specific Ancestors module that you're looking for. Now, the re-rolling of these modules, right, will require, as a cost, will require gold, Kuiper, and a specific material, which also needs to be farmed in Axion planes. And this re-rolling will actually increase in cost as you do it. So there will come a point where it will be not feasible for you to keep re-rolling to get the best stats, and you'll actually have to abandon the module or stop rolling it because it'll basically bankrupt you. So I'm not a massive fan of systems like this because, you know, like, you could have like the perfect one and then just kind of like want to just roll and roll a couple of more times and get it, and then kind of like roll yourself into a situation where you don't you can't afford to roll it anymore, even though it's like kind of like the perfect item. You saw something similar to this in Diablo, and I wasn't a fan of it there. Again, this is a me thing. I'm sure other people will say, you know what, it's all fucking good, whatever. So, but the bottom line is that this will have an accumulated cost and essentially eventually will become kind of like unrollable. Next up, then, that brings us to trading. So one-to-one trading is actually coming in the game. They mentioned that November will be essentially a beta period for them, where they will be testing a lot of this, the systems with the trading, everything like that. This to me was the part of the dev stream which I saw the most potential issues with. Okay. First of all, the thing is, to keep this from becoming a system that is exploitable, what they've mentioned is that there's actually an MR rank requirement for being able to trade, which I believe is 15. There's also some quests which you have to complete to be able to actually trade. So there's like this onboarding process that you will be able to then only be allowed to trade. Secondly, there's only a certain amount of trades that you can do per day. So you can't just sit there and fucking just throw out trades like 400 every day or something like that. We don't know exactly what this limit is, but it exists there. Now, it is a one-to-one system, okay? Meaning that the point here is you have to be on the same Albion server as the person that you're trading with. And then there's a trade terminal in Albion that you go to, and then you actually trade with the person. Now, at the moment right now, the only things that you're going to be able to trade are trigger modules and ancestors modules. Okay? And so there's not like everything else in the game you can trade. There's literally only these two categories of items, which are trigger modules and ancestors modules. And the way that you trade for them is through the premium currency Caliber. Okay? Now, this is something that we suspected all along since this was being talked about when trading came up originally. At that point, I already kind of like raised some concerns regarding this and it being a premium currency. But probably the most insane part of this thing for me is that there's a tax system in the game, right? Which basically taxes on the sale of an item. And the tax is in fucking premium currency, which is wild. Okay, that to me is weird. I don't have a problem with the trading system at all. I think it's an inevitability in a game like this. However, having the tax, meaning the cost for the trade, be a premium currency to me is a little bit fucking not cool. Actually, it's not a little bit not cool. It's not cool. So I would expect that this would be a gold cost or something like that, some kind of thing that you would need to play the game for to earn that currency to do the trade, but not something that you would actually swipe a credit card for to afford the trade, if I could put it that way, meaning like to pay the tax. But yeah, I believe this is going to be fucking problematic, and this is probably not going to be. I haven't done like a sense check in the community. I haven't checked like fucking message boards and stuff like that to see how this has been received, but this was immediately eyebrow raising to me when I saw it. So probably going to be some issues about this and everything. Now, how do you make sure that you're actually able to trade with someone? Because what are you going to do? Just walk around and fucking Albion spamming people like, hey, do you have modules to sell? Hey, looking for some modules, bro. Y'all got any more of those modules? No. They've actually built functionality into the official website as well as the companion app, which will then allow you to see listings of items. And then if you see a trigger module or an ancestors module there that you want, then you click there, and if the person is online, it will whisper them in game and basically allow them to add you as a friend. And once they add you as a friend, then of course you can join them in Albion, and then you'll be able to go to this terminal and do a one-to-one trade. It's a little bit of a convoluted fucking system, honestly. And due to time zone changes and all of that stuff, it's obviously always going to be a fucking nightmare getting hold of dudes who are offline and have the items listed and whatnot. But again, as they mentioned, this is a new system for them. It's something new that they're piloting in November. So they're asking for people's patience, everything like that, as they kind of like navigate through this and figure out the best way to do it. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But immediately off the top, like the tax system, which is 10% on the value of the sale in premium currency, is fucking wild, baby. It really is. All right, then we do have a new battle pass, of course, which is again by now also usual for us. So we technically have 2 battle passes every fucking season. In this season we have 3 because we also had the sword battle pass. But this battle pass has a new battle pass weapon in it, which is the Hypernova, which is a sword. As swords go, this is a pretty cool looking sword, I guess, in terms of like the effects that are doing stuff. You guys by now know that I'm not a big fan of the sword, so it is what it is. But that is our battle pass weapon. There's also a new ultimate weapon called the Hive Master. This is a tactical rifle that basically shoots a fucking bug or an insect that attaches to the target that is hit by it. And then when you then shoot that target and that target remains alive, the damage shoots out of that target to enemies around it. So essentially you attach like a fucking mine to a strong enemy, and then you shoot that strong enemy and it deals damage to the weaker enemies or just the enemies around it. So interesting idea for a gun. We're gonna have to see how good it is. The damage numbers that we saw, they were kind of like okay and everything like that, but I think the idea here being that this is essentially a weapon that allows you to use a strong enemy to deal with lots of weaker enemies around it. But I believe we already have a better version of this in Malevolent. Malevolent deals equal amounts of damage to fucking everything, and then basically tough enemies, weak enemies, everything around that take, you know, a shitload of damage, and they kind of like all fucking die. So we'll have to see this. I mean, again, new stuff added to the game tends to be good. It tends to not be shit. Some of the times they are like little bad ones. But yeah, we're gonna have to see if this is any good. But that's the new weapon that's being added. Again, most likely farmable in this new area that we have as well. Then we kind of like, they speed ran through like a whole bunch of additional stuff that's being added. So first of all, we also have like 32 new sword modules. So there's already a bunch of sword modules in the game. Now there's another 32 being added. These ones all flesh out sword power and everything like that even more. So we're going like fucking balls deep into swords now, I guess. They also showed 18 new ultimate modules. Now they're going kind of like in a direction now with this, and that these new ultimate modules are very much focused on styles of play, right? Or so these ultimate modules are specifically around like skills and skill types and specific damage and that sort of thing. So these 18 new ultimate modules most likely will also come from that new area. Then we also have 2 new external sets. The first one is called Hazmat Disposal Team. Basically, this is a toxic set, and it kind of like seems like it's tailor-made for Harris. Not to say that it wouldn't work on other toxic descendants, but again, it kind of like seems to suit Harris's playstyle very well. We also have a second external component set called Pulsating Power. Pulsating Power is based on a mission-based skill. So think like Blair, Bunny, and of course Harris as well. And basically what this is it as long as you're using emission-based skills, it deals more damage, but it also increases the cost of those skills. So basically a way for you to ramp up damage on emission-based skills. So seems kind of cool as well. Then 19 new mutant cells were also showed. Again, these ones very much like the new ultimate modules. These mutant cells also target specific skill types. They suspect that this will most likely shake the way that, you know, certain mutant cells being auto includers for certain builds. This will most likely shake that meta up a little bit. Of course, we'll see once we have some of these. Some of the ones that they showed on screen, basically, as I said, focused on when you use a specific skill, then it ramps the damage of that specific skill. But when I say specific skill, I mean skill type, like emission skill or clash skill, or, you know, something like that. So interesting stuff. Of course, we'll have to see. Again, these ones also most likely coming from that new area. Last but certainly not least, in the added new items, we also have 3 new trigger modules. The first one that they showed was one called Steel Vanguard. It's specifically focused on like clash type skills. Basically how it works is it takes the damage type of a reactor and applies that the element onto the thing. So then when you use clash type skills, it does this AoE around you, and if you have a toxic reactor, then that AoE is toxic. If you have a fire reactor, then the AoE is fire. So that's basically how that works. They also showed another one, a second trigger module called Relative Speed. this is essentially something that activates on slow skills. So think something like Viessa, all of her skills, because they are chill skills, they slow the enemies. Basically what this does is whenever you slow enemies, you gain a proc, all right? And once you get up to like 50 of this, then essentially it dumps a bunch of damage. So it has a bit of a ramp up effect or something like that. But again, like a Descendant like Viessa, where you are just slinging the fucking skills out like they were showing on the dev stream, I don't think it takes you that long to hit the 50, first of all. And then once you do, you're obviously just pushing out a massive amount of additional damage. So pretty cool. I think it's, obviously ideally something that's very, very nice for Viessa. So super excited to slap that into her build. Then we also, last and not least, the final trigger module that they showed was something called Domino Drive. And this is for chain type skills. And what it does is when you use a chain type skill, it actually increases the range and the fire damage of that skill. So because this is fire damage, it's like Izumo is good for this, Blair is good for this, for example, because they use chain type skills. And so then this will essentially just increase their range as well as their damage potential with more fire damage. Then we get to the rebalances for this part of the patch, and specifically I think the flagship rebalance that's being done here is Hailey. Now a lot of people have been asking for a Hailey rebalance since like fucking the dawn of Hailey, and the time is finally here. So it looks like this is to the same vein as, like, for example, what they did with Lepic and so on. So it's like a kind of like a complete overhaul of the Transcendent modules. They showed 2 Transcendent modules. The first one was Camouflage Sniping, which is very much focused on keeping her Descendant identity intact, meaning like she's a sniper and she shoots from far away, and essentially giving you more damage and stuff if you shoot enemies that aren't targeting you, so aren't aware of you. So I suspect this will be pretty good in situations where you are teaming up with other players and they distract the fucking avoid intercept boss or something like that, and you give them the old 1-2 in the back of the head. They also showed Cold Heart, and this was interesting because this essentially changed her skill kit almost completely. So her skills become singular, first of all, and secondly, her fourth ability essentially becomes like an AoE nuke that very close to her. It very much seemed like it was almost like a Hailey Viessa fucking mixture. That's the vibe that I got from that. But more importantly, this actually removed the movement speed reduction or the penalty that you get on Hailey. So this actually makes her like as fast as, like, for example, Viessa when she's using her build to like sort of like run around. So interesting stuff. I think, I don't know if this solves a lot of the issues for Hailey players. I suspect not, because it's one specific Transcendent module that deals with the slowdown of her builds. And this is a overall general Hailey problem, is the fact that she feels so slow versus every single other Descendant. I don't know if this solves that problem, but again, step in the right direction. Then the second Descendant that was mentioned is Gley. So Gley is also getting a rebalance, so that's pretty cool. Gley has always been very popular, but recently I would say she's almost like more popular, I would say. So she's also getting rebalanced, and generally rebalance means buffs with these guys. So that's been the case like most recently. So that means that if you are a Gley main, Gley mommies unite, then this means that you will see probably I would say a relatively significant bump to your DPS, most likely, something like that. And last but not least, there were some QoL like things which they announced. Some of it, I mean, it didn't really blow my hair back. Specifically, they mentioned Wall Crasher. This was interesting. So Wall Crasher is actually receiving a buff which makes it stronger against multi-hit. This is specifically put into place to curb Serena players being able to just annihilate Wall Crasher so fast. So the idea is this is going to slow down Serena damage on Wall Crasher. But to counteract this so that it doesn't feel like Wall Crasher is now getting more tough to kill, they are dropping Wall Crasher's HP. So the relative kill time that you would have with a Serena's going apeshit with multi-hit, or now with this buff and just everybody just dealing their damage, should be kind of like the same. So you're not going to see slower kills or faster kills. The idea is that it kind of like stays near the middle, I suppose. Unless you go in with like, I don't know, fucking 7 Serenas. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting that they chose to basically, instead of adjusting Serena, they just adjust the boss. so to deal with Serena. So yeah, they again, also they've adjusted that the boss isn't as resistant to crits and stuff like that, which will most likely also open up other Descendants having some more of a chance against Wall Crasher, where let's say previously they weren't exactly considered like as viable as, you know, some of the other Descendants. But that's pretty much it. That there was a whole Q&A section after the fact. That's usually the part that takes me the longest to work through, and I kind of try to grab a few things out of there if I can. I ended up kind of like tuning out after a little while. I don't think that, at least from the first little bit of it that I watched, I wasn't seeing anything new or substantial that we didn't know about yet. However, if there was something in there that I missed, or just in general that I missed in the entire dev stream, please feel free to add it to the comments down below. Would love to hear it. It's entirely possible. This shit is at 4 o'clock in the morning for me, so it's a tough watch. And I'm sitting and taking notes while on like my 4th coffee and stuff like that, so I'm trying to survive it. But yeah, that is it in a nutshell. Please let me know in the comments down below what's your favorite part of the announcement, everything like that. Are you still playing the First Descendant? Have you moved on? Arc Raiders is literally almost out in like a few hours. I'm sure a bunch of people might be jumping into that. But yeah, thank you very much for the support. It's been fantastic. Keep watching. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe. And as always, fucking cheers.